I have a special guest that is joining me today. He is the former president of Americans for Prosperity for 17 years, which was it is the largest grassroots organization. And he's the leading Republican strategist out there right now. I have on the line Tim Phillips. Thanks for joining me tonight. I know you're at the RNC convention in Milwaukee, so I appreciate you taking your time to call me.
Absolutely. It's a big night here in Milwaukee, Angela.
I know it is. So, like I said, I've been talking about the VP candidate, J.D. Vance's speech earlier, where some, mainly on the left, have criticized his speech, that it could have been passed for a speech given by, like, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. What say you with that?
Yeah, that's a silly statement by folks on the left. He talked about energy independence, making America an even bigger energy producer. That's something the left would never do. They're so beholden to the environmental extremists. He called for expanding or extending the Trump tax cuts that got this economy going again, that gave every American who paid federal taxes an actual cut.
Mm-hmm.
No Democrat was going to call for expanding extending these tax cuts and reforms. It was a broadly unifying Republican message. It's a big tent party, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some old school Reagan folks. That happens to be me, by the way. But you've also got a lot of new folks that Donald Trump has brought into the party, and that's a healthy and good thing.
Yeah. So I'm going to play a soundbite because I know you're busy there and you're probably not watching to all the networks like I am. But yesterday after the speech on MSNBC, Alex Wagner focused on one particular part of his speech where he talks about his family's burial plot in eastern Kentucky. And she referred that to white supremacy. Listen to this.
And I just think the construction of this notion reveals a lot about someone who fundamentally believes in the supremacy of whiteness and masculinity. And it's couched in a sort of halcyon, revisitation of his roots. But it is actually really revealing about what he thinks matters and who America is. And that America is a place for people with a shared Western background.
Tim Phillips, I don't know what the word halcyon means, but what do you make of that?
It's a reason why the Democrats are losing this race. Americans are so sick of all of this, the calls of racism, all the woke stuff that's going on. They're just tired of it. They want a country that works again. They want a country where people can make a living and not have to be buried by inflation every single day when they go to the grocery store, when they buy gasoline. They want better lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like all the elites on the left ever give them are lectures on racism or sexism or misgendering or all of these woke points that Americans are they're done with it. And they're worried more about how they're going to make a living, how they're going to pay for food for the table. That's what they're worried about. And I think that quote you just played,
mm-hmm.
Angela, there's a reason why the Democrats are losing and losing badly this year.
Yeah, I have to say, many like her will take any comment, any message, any speech, take it out of context so it fits their narrative that that the Republicans are racist or sexist.
Yeah,
and they do this
people
because
are just done with it.
Yeah, I feel that they also do this because they have no policy to run on or no platform to run on.
That's it. No, when you're presiding over an economy where people literally have a fear factor going up to 10 when they go to the grocery store or when they go to renew their insurance on their car, when that's what you're doing, when they don't know what new hotspot in the world is going to blow up because of Joe Biden's weak leadership or lack of any leadership, when they look at what the latest failure is from a federal institution or whether it's the Department of Justice or now the Secret Service looks, sadly, not like it's doing a very good job. And when that is the record under your watch, you grasp at stuff like this. And I'm telling you, it's not going to work. I think people are fed up with it. I also think that Trump and the Republicans this year, but especially Donald Trump, I think they're going to get record levels of Latino support not seen since George W. Bush's reelection in 2004. Mm-hmm. And I bet they get the largest share of the black vote literally since the 1950s in Dwight Eisenhower. So I think it's going to make history with Latino voters and with black voters as well. that we haven't seen since those two examples. George W. Bush in '04, the level he reached with Latino support, we haven't come close to it since then. I bet you Trump comes close to matching it. And with black support, I'm telling you, it'll be the largest level of black support for a Republican nominee for president since the Eisenhower administration.
And I think even the youth vote there too, Gen Z. I think they're coming along too.
I do.
So there are people criticizing the GOP based on, I guess, messaging from this week, or they have selective hearing. That they say that there's no room left for social conservatives. What's your take on that?
I don't see out at the grassroots, and you know this, I'm on the road a lot.
Yeah.
I was in Georgia, a battleground state, 2 weeks ago. I was in Pennsylvania.
I love following you on social media.
Yeah, now I'm on the road. And when you're out there talking to regular, good old, normal grassroots supporters on the evangelical side or the conservative pro-life side, they don't worry about a platform or things like that at a party convention. They look instead at what the results are of the policies. And I think the results have been, or I know the results have been, to let people at the state level decide what to do on this issue.
Yeah. And I got one more question, because I'm going to shift it up here a little bit, but I know you're paying attention to the news.
Yes.
All about Joe Biden. And I don't think it's no longer a question if, it's more of when. Of when Joe Biden will step aside from his reelection campaign. How does that play into just right now with Donald Trump? Because I know their strategy has been very focused on, this anti-Biden messaging, right? Challenging his policy. How does that come into play?
I think it does. It's going to create a period where the Trump campaign will have to think through what the messaging is, if it's Vice President Harris moving into that role or if they throw it open more broadly. I think literally the decision made by Joe and Jill Biden to do that debate, that first CNN debate, it will go down in history as one of the greatest blunders in American political history, Angela, right?
I totally agree.
He was being able to hide out for the most part. He had a compliant legacy media and a compliant Democrat Party and kind of the Democrat Party elites.
And it was
who
his
were all
rules.
willing, and they were all willing to play the game. They knew he wasn't fit, mentally, and I say that with respect. But there is a point when folks can't do a job as well. The American people thought they knew what they were seeing. They knew what they were seeing. But that class I just mentioned told them, oh, no, don't believe your eyes or ears. Just listen to us. And that was exposed when Biden debated. And the media and the elite class on the Democrat and the left side were so embarrassed that they got outed, that they suddenly turned against Biden. And it's fascinating to watch them so quickly kind of eat their own. And I think the reports are right. It seems like it'll be a new race with Biden out. I think that the Democrats have a very awkward situation that is going to leave parts of their coalition angry no matter what. If they pass over the vice president, who's been a loyal member of his team for right at 4 years now, the first woman of color in that role, they're going to have a problem with parts of their electoral base.
Yeah.
If they stay with her, she struggled to build a profile that the American electorate is willing to vote for, according to really all the data out there.
Correct.
So they're in a pickle, Angela, and this pickle happened literally because the Bidens made, again, what will go down as the greatest tactical or strategic blunder. It's both, really, in the modern era to do that debate that exposed him. So I think they're going to have a rocky week or two. I will say this. At their convention, if it ends up being a process where it's unclear what will happen, that'll be the first time literally in probably 6 decades we've had a convention that was kind of open. It would inject an element of excitement and energy that could give them a short-term
boost,
respite from these brutal poll numbers that they're facing over the last 3 or 4 months. So that to me, that's the most interesting question. Do they allow an open process? But if they do that, they risk having, a Gavin Newsom who has an embarrassing record in California, and here's a kind of a privileged guy seemingly stepping over, other women, for example, who've been in the fray and in positions and ready to run for this. I think all of the intersectional roots come home, and it's going to be tough for them. I really do. It's when you have the ideology they have, which is this, intersectionality that doesn't look at individuals, but looks at gender and race and sexual orientation and all of these group factors, and then decides, well, these people are oppressors, these people are oppressed. When that's the ideology that drives, your appointments and your policies, it makes for exactly the kind of conundrum they're going to find themselves in, assuming Biden steps down.
Yeah. Well, man, I really appreciate all your thoughts here. This is going to be a long 4 months, very long 4 months.
I think we're looking at that. This is the most unsettled election cycle, I would argue, since 1968. When and by the way, to be clear, I don't remember 1968. Just to be clear, okay, young lady. But in reading about it, you had the horrific RFK assassination, the horrific assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the greatest Americans of that century or any other century. You had so much. You had a sitting president, Lyndon Johnson, have to, announce he was not running again, which could happen this time. You had a Republican nomination where a person thought to have been their career over 6 years earlier, Richard Nixon, came back improbably to win the nomination, and then in a barn burner of a general election to beat Hubert Humphrey. So this year, I think it's perhaps even more twists and turns even than 1968.
Yeah. Well, we have so much to talk about. I'm going to have you back on here one day.
We'd love to.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us while you're over there in Milwaukee. Thank you so much.